Okay, I think we'll get started, and you're all very welcome to the talk on the Bachelor of Science degree in Occupational Therapy. During the talk, I'm going to concentrate on two elements. First of all, I'm going to talk about the career of OT, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the course and the subjects of study. And I suppose if you understand a good bit about the career, it really helps you decide, is this something for you? Often when our first years start, they have a vague notion of what OT is about, but maybe not a really good notion, particularly if you haven't visited an OT department and you haven't kind of seen the breadth of what's out there. So we'll have a look at the career first. And a career in OT builds the skills for living. That's very generic. It really looks very broadly at what people need to do to live with quality in their lives, right across the board in every aspect of their lives. It offers you a lifetime of possibilities that are rewarding, and generally you're working with people, and working with people is very rewarding. Be it children, be it older adults, be it people with learning disabilities, mental health problems, people with physical problems. Recognizing the issues that they have, getting to know them and coming up with possible solutions is challenging but very rewarding. The challenges are certainly there, and you may start with a problem or a diagnosis. But everybody's different and everybody presents differently. And one thing that is overriding in occupational therapy is that we look at not only the person, but their environment and their occupations, the things they do in their day-to-day lives. So just looking at the picture there, you may see a guy with particular difficulties, but they may not be that apparent until you maybe take him into a particular environment which is very challenging for him. And in other parts of his life, he may not have those difficulties. So the OT is really focusing on what are the areas of people's lives that are giving the most problems that we can find solutions to. OT is very diverse. You could be working with people who have issues in relation to their work practices. Maybe it's someone who has back pain or significant fatigue and is no longer able to hold down their jobs in the same way as they used to be able to do. And it's about identifying what are the problems, what steps they can take to minimize the issues, and maybe looking at changing work practices. It can be working in people's homes, identifying things that people are finding hard to do, risks that people are taking that maybe they don't need to be, etc. So what do OTs do? Well, they enable people to do the things in life that are important to them, regardless of their physical or mental ability or their environmental circumstances. And these activities may be work or school related. They may be related to self-care, and self-care would span things like being able to dress yourself, take a bath, use the loo, groom yourself, choose the right clothing, etc. And your leisure activities as well. If you think of OTs as only working in hospitals, you might say, well, gosh, how would OT work in those elements? The work practice in particular settings like an acute care hospital would be quite different, you know, where patients come in, you've maybe a short time to get to know them, assess them, and you're looking at discharging them quickly. That will be very different, the role of the OT in that setting, compared to, say, out in the community, where you can look at children and how they're functioning in school, how people are getting on in their retirement, and being able to do or not to do the things that mean a lot to them. You could be helping a school child who has handwriting difficulties, who can't fulfill the normal school requirements, and maybe it's a simple hand function problem, and you need to look at things that will help them with that. So it might be building up the hand grip, it could be looking at a particular splint that you might fabricate, design for the person so that when they wear it, it is less tiresome for them to hold a pen. That's just an example. So again, you could be working in the school systems. There's some OT in schools here, not as much as in the States, in North America, in Canada, and in Australia. There's a lot of OT practice going on in schools, but it's growing here, certainly in Ireland. You could be looking at assessing and improving hand function. So for somebody, again, hands are so important to us. So if there is a problem with hands, be it grip, be it power, be it a sensory problem where you don't have the feeling, you could be looking at strengthening the function in hand, or you could be looking at modifying how people use their hands in various different ways. Some more examples of what an OT might do. So use advanced technology to enable a young man live independently after a spinal cord injury. So if you can imagine somebody who's had an injury and they're paralysed maybe from the waist down or even from the neck down, and their whole lives change, and there's an awful lot of work that needs to be done to get them living back in their community environments where they should be. So it may be looking at redesigning their homes and using the latest technology to make life easier for them. In a power wheelchair, using remote controls and sensors so that things open automatically for them. They can operate switches and controls and get on with their lives. It could be about assisting an old couple to care for one another in their own homes. And we know now with the growth of older people in our society, and that demographic is growing all the time. There's more older people living longer. So there's more problems out there in the community as people age and managing each other. And maybe it's looking at, a home care package so that people can stay and age in place, as we call it, and what are their needs. So identifying and assessing, the OT can assess what their particular difficulties are and either try and resolve those or get outside supports to come and do some of that work for them. It could be about travelling to developing countries or war regions and setting up a rehab program there, and that certainly happened. There was quite a lot of emphasis in years gone by in Romania in the orphanages with OTs working to try and bring some kind of rehabilitation and normalisation to many of the kids who were in orphanages who were deprived in many ways. Working with people with disabilities to modify their home environment to improve their safety. Lots of older people in their homes who are at risk of falling and who need that sorted out. So an OT would go in, look at the state of the home, what's unsafe, what's safe, but it's not just in isolation of the person. It has to be within how that person operates. So if you think you can just go in and pull out, that's unsafe, we need to remove that piece of furniture, it doesn't work that way. You've got to listen to the client, you've got to see what her wishes are, what they value, things that they're prepared to change, and risks they still want to live with, and do that negotiation. It's always challenging and it's always different. There's no prescriptive method in OT. It's not like maybe, a particular surgery that works in a very defined fashion. Everybody's different and every approach is different accordingly. Changing the way people perform activities that they value so that they continue to do them. So it may be that they have to do them in a different way, but not giving up on them. So maybe it's somebody who is now confined to a wheelchair, and how do they continue to play sport, for example. Assessing the driving ability of somebody following a stroke, very common, and people suddenly maybe have to stop driving and the family have no clue, should this person be driving any longer? Maybe somebody who's losing their memory and, do we take the keys off them, do we not? So OTs are at the forefront of trying to determine somebody's ability to drive, their driving skills, their driving habits, and looking at the potential to rehabilitate them in that area, or making the controls in the car different so that they can continue for somewhat longer. Alternatively, looking at different types of transport if it's determined that they can't drive any longer. Visit workplaces to assist people to modify their jobs and design better work environments to suit their needs. OTs would work with things like repetitive strain injury, people working on computers all day, and they suffer as a result of that, eye problems and hand-eye coordination difficulties. And looking at the design of the workplace is another area of practice. Researching the health effects of participation in meaningful occupations. And research in OT is growing all the time, internationally and here at home. We're looking at the effectiveness of what we do, the value for people in what we do, and the evidence base. And the research is an important part of OT. Here's some visual images of OTs, assisting somebody to become more independent in their own home. So looking at what are the things you really want to be able to do still. Okay, you can't do it as you did before, how can we adjust it? And working through it, it's not good enough to just give somebody a booklet and say, here, have a look at those things and see if any suit you. You know, you've got to get close to the person, you've got to get trust with them, build up a relationship, set goals together and move on from there. Looking at somebody in their bathroom situation, a very risky place, wet, slippy. Often people don't have the right equipment in their bathrooms, and that needs changes before the falls occur. And listening to people to improve their quality of life. Just taking time out and listening. What are the things they value? What are the things that they're not happy with? What would they like help with? And again, I stress that it's not your value system so much as listening to people's wants and needs and where you need to go with them. Improving the play and movement skills of a child with a disability. So you can see the range of age groups that OTs work with. And play is the work of the child, and it's absolutely critical that kids can play. And when kids have disabilities, they're denied play from many, many situations through stigma, embarrassment, but also they may not be able to physically handle the playground because it's not set up in the way that it needs to be. So making sure that they have the skills and can develop abilities so that they can keep up with their milestones. And helping people improve their mental health through things like drama or relaxation, or by developing self-management skills. And mental health is a huge area of practice for OT, again across the age groups, from young people, adolescents, through adulthood and into old age, where lots of different problems occur. So OTs facilitate a diverse range of people to learn new or better ways of achieving satisfaction in day-to-day living through involvement in meaningful activity or occupation. And that's the bit of occupational therapy. That's the medium we work through. Talk therapy, yes, there is lots of talk. There's one-to-one collaboration. There's listening. There's responding. But we don't lose sight of the occupation that's so important to everybody. So where can you work? You can work in hospitals, voluntary services, rehab units, so these would be dedicated places where people come in for a period of time to be rehabilitated. Schools, I mentioned earlier. Community health centres. More and more practice is going out into the community in tandem with the way the health services are moving out of hospitals and more community-based. And that's very fulfilling for an OT because you can get to grips with the real problems in situ, where they're happening. As I mentioned earlier, in the acute hospital, you may be more confined in what you can do within a bed space or within an OT department. But out in the community, you're there where the problems occur, you get to see the first-hand issues with the home, issues with the environment right beside the people, and there's loads of scope out there. OTs work alongside a multidisciplinary team which is made up of the social worker, physio, speech and language therapists, nurses, psychologists, doctors, teachers, architects, engineers. If you're looking at design and redesign, all those people are part of the picture. So you're not just working with the client, but all the other people who may be working alongside. And that's very exciting as well. So it's certainly not a profession where you're on your own in a room. If you prefer to be working kind of by yourself, managing yourself in a structured way with a computer, not an ideal place for you to be if you're thinking OT. What kind of person do you need to be? Are you social, compassionate, patient, analytical, and a creative thinker? Now, if I think of the students who I taught yesterday, they're very different. But it helps if you have some of these attributes to be open to being creative. And I guess the one biggest difference from going from second level to third level, especially when you're working towards your leaving cert, where you're so focused on material and learning the facts. And the students come in first year and the approach is sometimes, what do you want me to write? What should I put here? And it's not that kind of profession. There's very little carved in stone within OT. And it's up to you thinking through the processes and understanding how to think through, and then using the scientific knowledge to support that. If you are thinking about applying for the course, it would be really good to try and visit an OT at work. I don't know how you would do that. It's often a matter of ringing up, being nice, and asking, could you spend half a day? Maybe some of you have had the opportunity to do that. Maybe just a quick show of hands. Has anyone done that? Okay, right, some of you have done that, and that's great. You get to see a little glimpse of what it's really like. The salary, very important. I just had a look on the website, and at the moment the starting salaries are in excess of 37,000, and they rise to 78,000 for an OT manager in charge of a department. So for the likes of, we'll say, the head OT in the big hospitals, Beaumont or the Mater or St James's, you know, where you might have 30 staff or so. So it's not a bad starting point. They're a lot higher than salaries in the UK, for example, the starting salary there. I guess you could argue that the cost of living is different. The salary opportunities, you can work internationally and you can work at home. Many OTs enjoy healthy incomes in the private sector, and that's growing. If you ask me, are there lots of jobs now? The answer is no. But you know, when you start a course, you have to look at the longer lens of 4 years, and things will change. Jobs are opening up, as I said, in the community more. And as the economy lifts, the moratorium on posts will lift accordingly. It's not a profession that's going away. It's recognised as something that's needed. And so there are opportunities. But currently, as I say, not a lot of jobs at the moment. OTs have also moved into related areas where the salaries can be much higher, for example, in management, in admin, or in consulting positions. So I'm just going to talk now about the course itself. It's a 4-year degree course, and it's WFOT approved. WFOT is the World Federation of OT. What that means is that the Trinity programme has met the recommendations for world standardisation. And what that does is it kind of gives you a passport to work abroad. Having said that, various countries will have their own maybe exams that you have to sit in order to practice in them. And they'll have expectations in terms of continuing professional development, etc. But if it's a WFOT approved course, that means it's recognised worldwide on a worldwide stage. We take in about 40 students per year, 40 to 45. And the points last year was 505, but not everybody got a place on those points. You need to have one science subject with a C or higher in it. Typically we take about 10% mature students, so they're people over 23. And the majority of classes are in the Trinity Centre for Health Science in St. James's Hospital, with some classes here on Trinity. What is here on Trinity is psychology. So you do your psychology components here. And when you're working in the anatomy department, because you would be exposed to the cadavers, looking at the bodies in terms of learning parts of the body, and that happens in the anatomy department here on campus. Most of the other courses are in St. James's, and if you've never been there, it's up by beyond Guinness's. It's about 1.5 kilometres away from the main campus. And also up there is physiotherapy. The medical students are up there, some of the nursing students, radiography, nutrition. So you've lots of other students around you as well. So examples of some of the subjects that you study then: the basic sciences, including psychology, anatomy and physiology, and this is earlier on in the course. Then you look at, so that's the kind of normal body, if you like. Then you look at conditions in medicine, pediatrics, orthopedics, psychiatry. You're looking at theory and practice of OT, and that's quite a wide selection of courses. You're looking at the art and the science of OT. And in terms of art and science, you're looking at things like media that can make a change in people. And it could be art, as in drawing, painting, drama. It could be music, and many of those arts that can be useful mediums to work with clients. So if you are interested in those subjects, you would have a chance to use them within the course. You'd also study research methods and statistics, and there'd be examinations in that. Part of the final degree is a research project, which you would start in third year, and it would be collecting real data and analysing it and handing it in fourth year. Social policy is another core course, very important to understand social policy within the Irish setting. And clinical skills and practice education, or field work. The practice education is 1,000 hours, and it's on a variety of placements over the course. It has to be 1,000 hours to be WUFIT approved. So all of them are calculated by the practice education coordinator, and you are assessed on each of the placements, and you have to go through those hoops of passing each placement. So those hours accumulate to be 1,000 minimum, so they can go over. And the placements, we try to spread out the placements so that students can get, something in the line of a physical, as we call it, placement, a mental health, and a variety of age ranges as well, maybe working with children, working with adults. It's not always possible to get the full breadth, because we're down to the beck and call of OTs on the field agreeing to take our students, and it's whatever is available. But we generally have a very good spread, and you would often have to go outside Dublin for a placement. Some students like to organise places abroad. We've had students who have organised places in Canada, in the States, in Belgium, but they would have to be placements that we would approve of. So there would be discussion between ourselves and the OTs in that country to make sure that they were adequate. So I guess the last picture there just shows again the breadth of the kind of things and you would do, the kind of people you would work with, and that's really it. So thanks very much, and have you any questions? We have about 5 minutes for questions, so please feel free to fire any. And if you're too shy to ask, remember there is the desk downstairs with OT staff working on it, where you could have a more intimate chat. If you want to come up to me after this for a few minutes, that's fine as well.